Hello, everybody. It's Justin Case and Scott Dudley back again for another episode of American Consciousness. Hello, Scott. How you been there, buddy?
I as conscious as possible, I guess. No, I don't know, man. I'm just kicking it. I enjoy retirement, and I'm a decent house cleaner. Not great.
Well,
Take the dogs to the dog park.
right.
Uh,
You still have
life
lot.
could be a lot more complicated, I suppose.
No, but you still carry a load of responsibilities.
I do. I cleaned out the guts of the air conditioner the other day because I wasn't feeling the performance of the air conditioner coming in hot summertime now.
Oh, that was smart.
It made a big difference. So
Oh,
all the little vents things with the little tiny metal thing.
yeah. All right, Scott. Why are we here? What are we going to talk about?
We're going to talk about something that comes up a lot in the dog park, and it comes up because everybody. It's like when we all sit down there, everybody brings the thing that they heard and lays it on the table and says, "Is this true? Is this right? Is this what we're doing?" And so this topic that we're going to talk about is basically the grounding of any discussion about what's real. And that is kind of the relationship between thoughts and truth, and how we can discern that, and how we can make sense of that, and how that might be beneficial in the long term.
Okay.
So, or as you were pointing out just prior, welcome to the land of delusion. It's
That's
a sunny place.
it is. It's comforting.
It's got new age elevator music playing on full volume all the time.
24/7.
So let's start with thoughts. Thoughts are and yet, my background in behavioral health really got me dialed into thoughts. And here's what I learned. The average person, obviously I'm way below average, but the average person has 70,000 thoughts per day. 70,000 thoughts per day. That's a lot of thoughts.
It is a lot of
And
thoughts.
and there's no little like Justin or Scott back in our heads constructing these thoughts. They just spontaneously emerge.
Well, I'd love to know how they counted 70,000 thoughts.
They gave you, it's like UPS. When I worked at UPS, they didn't see that I was counting 3,000 packages per hour, which is what I had to unload off of the semi trucks when I first started there. They came for 60 seconds and they counted the packages. And then they multiplied by 60. And if it
Wow.
didn't hit 3,000, then I got like angry football coach yelled at.
Well, their percent error would be pretty high, Scott. I don't know how anybody could react to that.
Well, and inevitably they chose to count on the days where the truck was stacked the wrong way and was full of 69-pound boxes of bolts that were going to Diamond Rio Trucking. And so they were rolling the wrong way down the ramp, and you were having to push them to get them out of the truck. And then the guy would show up and count. So ultimately, he was drawing conclusions based on an abnormal, unjustifiable situation. I'm pretty sure that's what they did with thoughts. They got somebody to click a button every time they had a thought for X amount of time, and then just multiplied it out by a day.
Me being, a skeptic, I would assume that the mad football coach boss was just watching for those nuts and bolts to come in, knowing you were on the dock, so he could come out and count, so he could get in your grill, so to speak.
You know, I was for our sister show, 8 Ball. I was actually studying adages, and one of the adages that we pulled was never attribute to malice anything that can be adequately explained by ignorance. and
Well, yeah, good point.
and I've actually used that on people a lot because it's like because people take it personal, right? It's like no, they're picking on me. No, they're just not. They're just not aware of the collateral damage that whatever they're doing is causing.
See how kind you are because I just go, no, they're just idiots. So,
Yeah, well, yeah, there it is. I mean, that's kind of the shorthand of where I was going with that.
no, I know. But you were correct. You were 100% right.
I've got strict language laws in my house. I'm not allowed to use derogatory, albeit true, descriptions of people. So
Well, I don't know that being using the term idiot. I don't is not necessarily derogatory. If
no, it used to have a specific parlance in IQ, which is a whole nother bag of worms that we shouldn't open. But it got general usage for someone whose point of view you disagree with.
no, okay, it never applies there. But okay, let's get to this, Scott. So let's
Yeah.
get on to the show.
So 70,000 thoughts. Let's dial back to that because we had like 183 thoughts right there in our little tangential breakdown. 70,000 thoughts is a lot of thoughts. And
Yes.
if you were bored, you could sit there and process these thoughts. Like this is a confirmed true thought. It's sunny outside right now today where I live. Okay, confirmed true. I look out the window, see the sun, we're good. No clouds. You know, or something that is like an opinion. Like, oh, this tax increase is awful. Our electric rates got increased 70%. And that legit seems pretty awful. But waking up in the morning and going, that's awful. Well, not to the electric company. They can buy all new trucks. They can make sure and send out extra crews for overtime. Whatever benefit that they receive out of it, they're not seeing it as awful. But from where I'm standing, it feels that way, or it seems that way, or it appears that way. And that's the first trick. So if you're writing tricks down today, beware of the words to be, is, are, were, any of the past tense words. Because anytime you say that, you're creating this world of certainty around something that may or may not deserve that. And so that's when I'm writing, I actually go back through my drafts and everywhere I use a form of the word to be because it's easier and faster, and it's just kind of our shorthand that we've learned, at least in U.S. culture, to say is or are for everything. I'll go back and if it's not an is or are, and it hardly ever is or are, then I'll go back and say it seems or it appears or some people believe.
Well,
But I'll take away the certainty because the certainty isn't true.
no, I agree. And a big culprit that a lot of people use is all. All men
Right?
are. All women
Right.
are. All Republicans are. All Democrats are.
And I'm so oppositional. Whenever somebody says that, I'm like, I'll just do whatever I need to do to prove them wrong.
Well, the trigger that I have that's very, very common in society is when they say it is what it is.
Well, you're doubling down on false thinking,
And you might be an idiot.
right?
Right.
I might be. Now, see that there you go. That's a perfect statement because certainly I'm certain that to some people they would judge me as an idiot, and some people judge me as brilliant, and a lot of people judge me as I don't care. I mean, remember that day you showed up to high school? You didn't even want to go to high school, and you showed up and you had like that big star, giant zit right between your eyes,
I do not.
and you were thinking that did you have good skin in high school? I don't even want to hear it.
For the most part. For the most part. And
All right, Lord.
bad diet, good skin.
I had okay skin, but I had a couple times where I had ginormous acne like breaking out, and you look in the mirror and say, "Oh my God, everybody's going to notice." And and you would be like, I don't want to go to school today, and then you go, and you nobody'd say anything, not even your friend. Say, oh man, that looks like it hurts. Nobody'd say anything.
Well,
Um, I shaved off a beard once in a workplace with about 100 people that I worked with all the time. After about 2 weeks, somebody said, "Did you do something different? You don't look the same."
yeah, yeah.
And that's kind of the rule here, is that most people are not paying attention to your qualitative stance in the world. Who are you? What do you act like? Do I like it? Do I not like it? Whatever. They're worried about their own stuff.
I think that's for the most part. For the most part, you were kind of definitive there, Scott. But for the most part, that's true.
Oh yeah, yeah. That's why I've stopped showering most of it, except for the show. The show is kind of my weekly bathing placeholder,
Most of the time.
or dentist appointment. Then again, you're sitting in a chair and people are hovering over you. It's.
Right, 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 right. So
And my water bill's gone way down.
I like the premise of this show, and I agree with you. This definitive statements and categorizing people and grouping them together, it's just moronic. It might be moronic. It might be moronic.
It seems moronic.
It does. It does.
I always slap myself when I do it, because again, with 70,000 thoughts, it seems like it's not that hard to latch onto some of those and say, oh yeah, look, this is true. This is absolute. This does apply to everyone.
Yeah, well, just at the dog park. But, if we think about that 70,000 number, what percentage of them would be crap? Or might be crap?
There's another adage for the 8 ball. Hey, and these are previews, so you want to start thinking about these, because they're going to come your way like a sideways curveball. There's another adage that 90% of everything is crap.
Seems reasonable.
90%. And it was Theodore Sturgeon, a science fiction writer, who came up with that.
Well, yeah, certainly today, and probably, back in the day, I think people exaggerated for entertainment's sake. I think they might have exaggerated for entertainment's sake.
Well, here's the thing. I would, and I'm not practicing whether I agree with this or not, but 90% of everything is irrelevant to what you're doing or where you're at in any given moment. I would say that seems like a fair statement.
It does seem like a fair statement, and it's a sad reality. It might be a sad reality. If we're wasting that energy and those thoughts on those types of things, it's a shame.
On whatever drama the world is spinning up, whether it's in your family or on TV or, Yeah, I watch the weather report, and I get, the weather in the world or in the United States, and what percentage of that actually applies to me? And not much.
Well, and what's strange to me is I don't believe weather reports. They may not be any more accurate, I had to get May in there, than they were 200 years ago. They just kind of throw it out there, and this might happen. They need to temper their statements in those weather reports, because they talk about doom and gloom and take shelter, hide, and sometimes that's valuable, but sometimes it's not.
I would say that as a weather nerd, I've been following it my whole life. I would say that they have significant advancements in relatively close time frame predictions. So if I went on my little phone app right now and looked at what the wind speed is going to be like here tomorrow at 2 p.m., and they're going to have a number, and that number is going to be pretty close. So that's good. But if they say I read a report the other day that we're going to have a Southwest desert monsoon season, and I miss those desperately.
Well, they get them, Scott. They're just up the border of Arizona and New Mexico.
Well, and they've missed a bunch in Arizona though too. Arizona's been pretty shorted out.
Well,
few
Let,
years too.
let's repeat my statement. It might be because the vast majority of them are up the border of Arizona and New Mexico,
That's true. That the monsoon seldom reaches this far west.
or central
Now,
Arizona.
that's true. Although Central Arizona really expects that they're going to get, Phoenix area expects that they're going to get thunderstorms on a regular basis in the summer, and when they don't, they get kind of bummed.
Well, no, 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 no. Having grown up in Phoenix, they do get thunderstorms and
Yes.
lightning
Yeah.
displays, but no moisture. And they do get rain, but it never hits the ground because it evaporates. At 110 degrees, it's hard for that rain to not
Well,
evaporate.
so hit your Phoenix homies up because they are right in the center of a bullseye of prediction that says that they're going to get a substantially heavier monsoon season precipitation wise this year. Now we're at the outside edge of that, but we're still in it. And and I look at that prediction and say, well, that seems like a horse race at this point. Maybe.
Well, I've done a lot of work with weather, and I do weather reports all the time. But to give you an example of the prejudice in even NOAA, when they change staff, in comes a new attitude, and all of a sudden these predictions and forecasts change dramatically to the point that I've worked with the directors of NOAA in those areas, and I said, "What is this?" It's just crazy.
And I think they have different ways of reading their tea leaves.
They do. I'm sorry about this, Scott. Let
It's
me.
not me calling you.
No, it's not, and it might be an emergency. So let me see what it is.
Yeah. I'll hum a song in the meantime, and we'll
Okay,
what
I'm.
goes up. Oh, I'm sorry.
I might be typing now, doing podcast.
And you multitask. That's really the question. And then, so your thoughts are racking up right now, right? I mean, you even asked
Oh,
yourself that.
oh yes, they are, and some of those thoughts I shouldn't have been having. I don't want to say impure thoughts, but thoughts of disgust that are just might be dragging me down.
Reactive thoughts, like really,
Yeah,
got to deal with this too.
right, right,
It's interesting, but one of the ways to get a sense of how thoughts go flying through your head is meditation. And I'm a long-term meditator, and I realize that meditation doesn't it may not be effective for everyone. It's not everyone's cup of tea. Just like
right.
Pilates is not everybody's cup of tea. But the people who do it have really nice abs. you know,
Well, they
right?
might. They might. I'm sure there's some people that do Pilates
Typically,
that don't. Yes.
if you don't have nice abs, just like 5 minutes of Pilates is enough to put you in traction.
Well, and your abs may be genetic. Maybe.
Yes, yeah, indeed, that is true. Well,
Well,
as might be the ability to meditate.
right.
And that is part of what I've seen with people in meditation is people with really active minds struggle with it, and people whose minds have already kind of taken control of them, and that's people with what we would call psychotic disorders. And like if you stop and try to relax and just be aware of your thoughts and try to breathe them away and let them go and just kind of slow that process down a little bit, their thoughts are too intense. And so when they stop and do that, it's like, no, I'd rather turn up the stereo in the car and drive with a little bit more noise so I don't have to notice stuff like that. So, but for the rest of us, meditation's really useful. It's got research. I don't know who sponsored it, but research indicating that regular meditation, 25 minutes a day or so, is really good for your physical health. It helps so a person who's done meditation that long for 10 years has physiologically a 15-year younger body than somebody who doesn't meditate. I don't think that applies to children.
Well, yeah, probably not. But and let's use the might word. Might have a 15-year younger body. But
Yeah, and in general, in the research,
yeah,
they're we're finding that might happen. But you're right. If you're you're meditating and then you're turning off the meditation and snorting whiskey and shooting cocaine or whatever they were doing in the 70s.
Well, I practice a lot of self hypnosis and hypnosis on others, and I found that there were times that I was in the frame of mind or I was either in too much physical pain that I could
Yeah.
not put myself under.
Yes.
And that wasn't thought driven, it was a matter of the circumstances I found myself in.
Yeah. Yeah. I meditating with a crazy pain is an interesting experience because the minute you try to like you shut down and just try to relax into your breath, you're like, my back really hurts.
Yeah,
And that's the thought. and
exactly.
and then you can actually challenge that thought too. You could say, pain is a relative thing, and my back hurts, but that doesn't mean I hurt. I can observe the back's pain and validate it, say, back, man, it sounds like you're going through a really hard time, but it doesn't mean I have to own it.
Well,
Sometimes that'll help you slip out of that.
not a meditator, nor do I practice it, nor do I want to practice it, but you might consider to put your masochist hat on.
I'm a
Where,
man.
there's always different perspectives. I mean, there might be different perspectives you can take towards that problem.
I having had an extraordinary amount of pain in my life physically. I've gone through some incredible stuff, and being totally accident prone as a kid, I really had to come to terms with the sensation of pain, and
Right.
I had to be to the point where, yeah, I hurt, but that's not gonna occupy what I'm doing right now. I'm
Well,
gonna put that over here somewhere and be aware of it, validate it. Not try to deny it, not try to put a lid on it, because anything you put a lid on, it just builds pressure, right? So, or it seems to build pressure.
you,
But just acknowledge the pain. Yeah, that hurts, and then move on.
well, and it is all perspective because I was going through a medical procedure where they were putting an IV behind my clavicle, and
Ouch.
that's it was a little more than that. The doctor, the anesthesiologist, who came in with a bunch of attending nurses, and when there's a bunch of attending nurses, you need to be concerned about what you're going through. But he said, "My gosh, you have a peculiar bone structure. I have no idea how I'm going to get behind around your clavicles." I said, "Okay." And kept going on and on and on and on. He said, "This pain must be excruciating." And I said, "It's apparent, but it's not excruciating." He goes, "I can't imagine how severe it must be." I looked at him and I said, "Doctor, have you ever fully torn a hamstring before?" And he said, he just like he gasped. And I said, "There's only one thing worse than that." He goes, "What's that?" I said, "It's the second time you fully tear a hamstring because you just lay down before the pain sets in. You start crying because you know what's coming." So it's all perspective.
I remember the doctor who took the X-rays of my wisdom teeth and said, "This is amazing. I've never seen a tooth wrap into a jawbone quite like your wisdom tooth is doing." And then when he pulled it out, he waved it in my face and said, "Look, there's all sorts of pieces of jawbone attached to it."
Oh
like,
man.
like, yeah, I know.
Thanks, Doc.
I'm sitting in the body. I can kind of tell.
Oh jeez.
And whatever you gave me ain't working.
Well, and dentists have always been suspect, so I guess oral surgeons should probably be suspect too. Or
I
might need to be. Or might need to be.
I don't know if you've gone this route yet, but I really tried to get better sedative painkillers for my colonoscopy
Right.
because I didn't because what they were giving me had a side effect of amnesia that you potentially could lose a couple months of your recent history. And I was like, "No, I'm working. I've got several projects going on here. I can't do that." And they were like, "Well, if you want something special, you need to go to another city because you're not going to get it here." I was like, "Oh, okay, whatever." And so they gave me this, and it was like I was supposed to go to sleep. I was supposed to, like be all groggy, No, I told the doctor. I said, "Hey, could you turn the monitor a little bit so I could watch along with you?" And then we talked our way through the whole procedure, which I passed, flying colors.
Right, I understand. Well, good
But
for you.
but but the thing is, because I was so pain, uh, pain just is pain. It's not like pain,
That's
So
okay.
there's no emotionality attached to it. Um, the procedure itself or the medicines that I take for pain don't really do much to me. I'm kind of just there observing all of that.
Well, it's all that kombucha, if I said that right.
Yeah, no, I had to cut down on the kombucha because it's unless you want to make it vinegar, there's still sugar in it.
And
And
I assume an
sugar,
alcohol,
sugar is not good for you.
and I assume an alcohol content too, right?
It's really, really slight.
Yeah,
Real,
right.
unless you do the chemistry thing and crank it up, and you can crank up your kombucha.
And your apple
I'll
juice. And
I'll send you a culture after the show and give you some tips on how to
no, no, no,
make the
no,
really scary kind.
no, no, no. I can't imagine. I can't imagine. I can't afford that thought. And now you've got my mind thinking about stuff I didn't even know about.
Well, more thoughts to process and make judgment on. But that's the thing. We have a lot of thoughts, and because we have so many, we start shorthanding. And it's easier to say that I don't know what's going on today in the stock market is horrible, and that's not even a seems to or appears statement. And you're walking around carrying it. And if you're like me and 25% of your retirement nest egg just disappeared, you could be catastrophic about that. Now I'm not sleeping. Now it's ruining my day. Now my wife says good morning, and I go, "What's good about it?" And all of this because I'm taking something and making it truth or making it real when it's very subjective, and it's very in the moment because next week it may go back up again, or it may go all the way away,
Well,
and my attachment to it's not going to change that.
but that information is affecting you. It may be adversely affecting you at times.
Well, because I'm swallowing the pill sideways.
Well, right, but why do you need to check it? Because you know it's out of your control.
Exactly. Well, and it's not that we're checking things. I think that at the dog park, that's really something that pops out. Like, where did you hear that? Oh, it just popped up on my Facebook thread, or it popped up in my newsreel, or it popped up, you know. So I'm getting fed this by some billionaire who's got a company that wants me to get excited and click smiles and mads and sads and everything all over everything they do. And that's part of the learning. And that's part of the learning is what am I when we talked about triggers, what am I being triggered by? But part of the learning is understanding that ultimately my thoughts are my responsibility.
Yes, absolutely.
And I don't create them, but I'm the observer. And if I'm observing and I'm jumping around like really reactive to everything, that's on me. I don't have to react to anything.
Right, right. You're the shepherd of your thoughts.
Yes. And most of them, you're just letting them walk down like leaves in a river. You're just letting them go with the river. You don't have to pick up every leaf and examine it for whatever.
Right, and it's just like the wind blowing. Yeah, exactly. So you might be correct. I'll say exactly because you are correct. How dare me?
Well, it just seems that way for both of us.
Yeah,
And if we've come to consensus on something, it probably is true.
it might be true. It has a higher probability of being true.
Absolutely. One of the things I learned, and I've learned a little bit about it on this show, is that the more emotional engagement I feel on any piece of information, A, the less likely it is to be true. B, the more likely it is that I need to stop and think about it before I react to it. And maybe even do some more research, maybe even hunt it down and say, is that true? Come on. And then look at it from the other angle because it may be relatively true from a certain perspective, right? And then it leans into something else.
Well, see, that's the amazing thing about your magic 8-ball stick, because it's therapeutic for both of us.
Oh, it really is, you know,
Yeah.
and ultimately it's that I laugh about the 8 ball because it's like, isn't this really the way that information is processed all the time?
I don't think information is processed as well as the 8-ball processes it all the time in society, but it's, and people that watch you and I, we don't, we don't necessarily agree on most things, but that discourse or those alternate perspectives don't create any anxiety for us.
No, and then in fact they can be useful because they show me blind spots.
And me too, as well. They might show me
Oh,
blind.
I hadn't thought about it from that perspective.
Well, they might show me blind spots. Now you're trying to talk me into it. But
We don't have
it's
any, we don't have any blind spots. We've got like we got more cameras than a Tesla. Let's face it.
there you go. But we don't have that efficient power, nor do we have people keying us, so to speak.
No, no, that's true, and that's really one of the benefits for me of the dog park, and that might be one of the takeaways of the show too. Is surround yourself with diverse points of view to the extent that you can, because it's hard. Typically in your household, there's a degree of agreement, and typically that agree if there are disagreements, it's not something that you sit around and lovingly play through, because that just is like, what do you want to argue about tonight, sweetheart?
Well,
So that stuff gets sidelined.
my sister and I had a coping skill. We could always say to one another that, our parents had one brilliant child, and we both agree.
There you go. There you go. But what we don't get is, we don't get, almost like what you and I have here, is a chance to try out what seems to be the truth to us, and see if that truth resonates with people who aren't always on the same perspective that we are.
Oh, absolutely.
That aren't living inside our silo. And that's one of the coolest things about the dog park, is that really, honestly, it is an amazing, we've got high school dropouts, we've got PhDs, we've got every major religion, we've got no religion, we've got every major political stance, we've got some burned out neutral people on politics. But it's such a good blend that you can't just walk in there and expect that you're going to get backslapped for everything you say is going to be, yeah, brilliant, dude, I totally agree. It's not like social media where the likes just pile up.
Well, I hope there's more laughter than not.
And that's one, and okay, and that's one of the things that people have to sort through is, sometimes people feel hurt, and sometimes you have to swallow and say, you know what, these people are just being honest, and and it's not to try to hurt me, it's to try to validate where their perspective is coming from. And, it's not about you.
Well, and fans of this show, people that come, and I assume they show up for various reasons. Some of them probably respect what we have to say. Some of them probably laugh their ways through it, but we're not talking about anybody out there.
No, absolutely. We're drawing from lived experience, as it were.
Well, and if anybody out there feels bad about what we've said, this is not the place to be.
No, you should just send us checks, and if we get enough money, we'll stop.
We'll talk about other things. We'll talk about roses and lollipops.
Dodger baseball.
Scott's got a stick on unicorns you all love.
Right, right.
Right?
Unicorns have a new sense of meaning in today's nomenclature, because a unicorn is a multi-purpose athlete that is really good at a lot of different things. So they're unique in terms of there aren't any others like that around. So there you go.
Well, yeah, I believe that's a self-designation that those athletes are trying to make because they're trying to make more money. They might be capitalists. So,
Well, you know what? Shelf life of an athlete's pretty short, and I don't forgive them their attempts to generate revenue.
okay.
That being said, I look at, if I'm watching, I don't watch much sports anymore, but when I do, I'm looking at the crowd as much as anything, thinking, okay, there's $500 there, there's $1,000 there, and I'm thinking, where do they find the group of people? It's 80,000 people who can afford that type of money every week to go root their team on. And I'm like, man, it's like there's a lot of rich cats hanging out here that I don't know.
Well, or they're laundering money. You just don't know. It could be layered and complicated, and and I'm guessing you, Scott, being a unicorn at heart, you probably watch for the wave to come around.
You know what? I used to try to get that, but I'm just inherently not wavy.
Yeah,
So I was always a little short, a little fast, or a little slow, and
yeah. I don't know where that originated, but I would like to talk to its creator and give them a different perspective.
it was in full cycle during the roar of '84 when the Tigers jumped out early in the year and won the World Series that year with Gibson, and so intimately familiar with the wave. It was a big thing in Michigan, and I used
Well,
to go to a lot of sporting events too, mostly
it's
high school, but a lot of sporting events.
the first time I remember it was about 1979, and I said, "Do not stand up in front of me again." I mean, it's hard to watch a sporting event when people are wooing and waving and standing and sitting.
That's true. It becomes more about them than it is about whatever's going on in the field.
Right, absolutely. So, all right. So the dog park. Well, and maybe do you consider the dog park and the people and the surroundings and the atmosphere therapeutic for you as well as your dog?
It's funny because again, it's like a peer support network where nobody intended it to be that way. The only thing we all have in common is we have dogs, and all of us are kind of, relatively confident that a dog park is a safe and secure environment for our dogs to experience their dogginess in ways that we can't get on a leash or in a yard. And so that's what really brings us together is that one commonality. But everything else is a coin flip.
No, I know, but we think about peer groups and people develop their own peer groups. I mean, some people will develop the gang that hangs out at Starbucks, the gang that hangs out at Cheers.
Well, yeah,
And
that's everybody doesn't have to go to a dog park to experience that, but there are ways to find that in the world.
right, absolutely. Find your people, so to speak.
I mean, I don't know who sits in the library of the in the lobby of the library right now and reads the newspapers because the library gets newspapers. But I bet you there's a group of people there, five, six people that call on a regular basis that hang out and read books or hang out and check out the media and the newspapers and stuff like that. That's a group of people. And the only reason they're there is because they like doing that. But they could be left, right, top, center, Catholic, Jew, doesn't matter.
Right, but all pro library. Whether it's a study environment, work environment, whatever. And, I used to sneak to the library from work so I could get some work done. Quiet.
Nice. Yep.
Respect.
Yep. Yep. The environment's there, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Respect. And, they would recognize me. What are you working on? And I would tell them because I knew they didn't care. They were just asking a question.
I had one of my favorite authors growing up was a guy named Stephen Meter, and I go back and I've got a couple of his books that I never returned to look. No, it's not true. That I actually ended up purchasing, and they're amazingly written in the context of the times, which was in the early 1900s. And so some of the stuff he says there is like the comedy of the 1980s. You just can't say it anymore. But there was a certain the Michigan State Library was the only library that carried his books, and they had a full shelf of his books. And so I would always like bug my dad and mom and say, "Hey, Take me to that library. That library's got all his books.
Well, there you go. And
So,
okay.
so library's a good environment. Churches are interesting because people go to church, but they go to church for kind of a values, belief-based mindset. So you get a sense of community in church, but you may not get the degree of random belief sets that you would get in a dog park or somewhere else.
Well, I don't know that that's fair, Scott, because I know a lot of people go to church just for what I call fellowship, which is just people getting together. And they maybe because they're going into the rectory and eating cookies and drinking Kool-Aid, which may be the highlight of their day.
Oh no, no, I'm not at all denigrating the sense of community
Right.
because it definitely is there. What you won't get is the diversity of opinion. You know, you're not going to run into atheists in the snack room.
Well, you may.
Well, you may, but they're going to be quiet about it because the wave will will sweep them up and take them out.
Well, it could. It could catch them. It could, they could see the light. And it might take hold of them.
Right. And people will be really hard trying to convince them that that's the way it's supposed to happen. You know, so you won't get as much of that. I mean, you know, if you go into the Catholic Church and say, you know, I have some thoughts about abortion, you're not going to run into like a whole bunch of different opinions on that because people who are actually attending Catholic Church every week are pretty much settled in on the beliefs that their church says are the right beliefs to hold. And so you're not going to get that. But if I go to the dog park and say that, I'm going to get the full spectrum.
Well, I believe you give that church audience too much credit. I believe there'd be quite a few women in those pews that may have had abortions and may have
Oh no, no, I completely agree
closeted
with that.
feelings. Closeted feelings.
I completely agree with that. But they're stated points of view.
Well, it was back when homosexuality was denigrated by society. People would ask me, "You don't seem to have a problem with it." I said, "No, not until some homosexual grabs my butt. Am I going to?" And that never happened, Scott.
No, that was the first step. The second step was you liked it, and then you felt the problem.
No, I didn't. Well, no, I did feel insecure that none of them did, but that was all. That was neither here nor there. But society does evolve. People want to talk that it doesn't. It certainly does. It does become more accepting.
Well, in general, and that's I think driven by thoughts as well. You
Yes.
know, because ultimately, once your thoughts get challenged, and you should be the challenger of your own thoughts. You shouldn't have the world trying to like slap you into like understanding some things are not quite as certain as you think they are. Because
Well,
if you're running around with a bunch of certainty in your head,
yeah.
then you're grabbing onto things, and like you said, you're slipping into delusionville, which isn't the worst place to go because it's a happy land.
Well, yeah. If you need to protect yourself, but I like I like being the shepherd of your own thoughts, which brings that responsibility back to all of us.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think drawing the connection between where I'm going with an opinion or what I say next or how I, talk to somebody about anything is driven by those thoughts.
Well, I agree,
And
and
have I put those thoughts through the scrutiny necessary enough to start spouting them like they're gospel?
right. I'll always share my thoughts, but I'm never going to expect you to have my thoughts or make you responsible for accepting them.
No, some other people's thoughts are interesting though, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And like sometimes I jump right on board other people's thoughts. You know what? That sounds reasonable to me.
That'll work today. It's Tuesday. Yeah.
Yeah, I tend to be chameleon, so Tuesday works, Thursday maybe not.
Well, we like to exercise our minds, so that's why we're susceptible to that. Where are you coming from? What do you think? And you're guilty of that. You're always asking for people to define their thoughts and opinions, and you're open to hearing for what they have to say, but maybe that's your professional training.
Some of it's that. Some of it's my curiosity because I look at like I look at every person. I look at every being. So I plants, animals, whatever, as kind of a node of information. And the more I can learn from being aware of what that node of information is seeing, the better off I can construct my world and live in peace and live effectively. And lifetime's pretty short, so you got to kind of put some effort into kind of getting it as right as you can, or slip into Delusionville and sit in front of the TV and watch novelas and eat Doritos, and that's another way to do this. You
No,
know, to each their own.
absolutely. I mean, is a meditation about inner peace, and that's what people should be striving for, all of us.
I'm gonna, the next time I close my eyes and take a deep breath, I'm gonna picture a bunch of peas in my head and go, "Oh, I've got inner peas,"
Inner peace, yes, absolutely.
and be inner broccoli.
Certainly between your ears, inner peace. Yeah, I like that.
So anyway, I think that that's the topic for today. The topic for today is you're full of thoughts.
Yeah.
That you don't create them. That's, I think, an important aspect to realize. They just emerge. They just come out. And when they come out, you can latch onto them and carry them around and think about them all day and stay up at night and worry about them. Or, you can put all sorts of emotional value on any of those thoughts. Or you could just let them go. And if you really want to stick a lot of emotional value on a thought, then you are you really have the opportunity to explore that thought and test it. Is this thought real? Is it true? Does it go to all circumstances? Can I say everybody loves horse racing? Or is that just the opinion when you're sitting in the middle of 150,000 people in Kentucky this weekend?
No, absolutely. But yeah, not everybody doesn't love horse racing.
No, they don't. No, they do not. And even every horse does not like horse racing, but some of them do.
Oh, some of them do, and that is their persona, and that is their life, and they're not happy if they're not doing that.
Nope, nope, nope. I've got a herding dog. I can tell you stories about their purpose in life.
Well, we've got a cat that I call Cutter as a nickname because he's always telling people where they need to go. He'll actually, if he catches you outside, he'll put you back inside. He'll take you right to the door.
Oh, nice. He's letting you know. He's a cutter, exactly.
Yeah,
Cutting you out of the herd.
yeah, exactly. We don't need you here. When you find yourself, cramping a cat's style, put that out of your
So,
mind.
the short version is you have a lot of thoughts. They're not necessarily true. They're not necessarily worth investing a lot of emotional energy in. And yet you can choose to do that whenever you want. And if you want an easier choice, perhaps, then discerning those thoughts, really stopping and examining. Where did I get this? Where did it come from? Does it really matter to me right now? Or is this something out in space that somebody who wants me to get excited about it threw this along and got me to start passing all sorts of judgments on it?
No, absolutely.
And I think with that, you end up having an easier life. There is no drama unless you want to make drama.
Right. And if you don't care about it, let it go. I mean, a bunch of celebrities went up in space for 10 minutes. I didn't care.
And according to the eight ball, they weren't real astronauts.
No,
Right?
they weren't. And they had no purpose in life. I mean, no, that's an exaggeration. I will ask the eight ball that. Did they actually have purpose in life?
Yeah. I did not from that ride, I don't think so.
No, absolutely. Well,
Just a bunch of rich people aggrandizing themselves and getting press.
yeah, but they felt it was important.
To what?
I don't know.
You
Not
know
to,
what? It may relieve wrinkles. If you think about it, gravity-free environment might, the effects of gravity are, pulls your skin down. So maybe they're a little bit bouncier and more pert.
well, I don't know if they were up there long enough to get a decent dose of radiation, but that can help you
There
lose
you go.
weight.
That's true. It's like skin abrasion. It's probably works miracles.
Yeah, exactly. And we're laughing at their plight, and we shouldn't be. I shouldn't be. Scott's not. I am.
Now, you do what you have to with this life. And if you want to burn 3 villages worth of carbon to go up in space for 10 seconds, knock yourself out.
No, exactly. Exactly. If you're just going out for a nice casual drive and burning fossil fuels, then you're paying the price.
Yeah, but you're also burning, like 1/50th of a short airplane trip. So
Sure, sure, sure.
you're good.
Okay. So what else did you get? So how was the dog park with this? Did they enjoy the conversation?
Well, this is something that has emerged over time because, like I said, everybody comes with kind of their current events, right?
Right.
It's like, is this true? I saw this. Is this true? Do these tattoos mean this? And each time that happens, you get kind of a wave of opinion, and then we start breaking it down. Well, maybe, but that was this person saying it, and maybe they said it because they want to influence how we think about it. And so that's what it generates at the dog park. That's what it generates. It kind of slows us down, and maybe two of us go onto Google and begin to search out different ways of potentially getting good information on whatever they're saying. And usually it's off. Uh, what were we saying? 90% of everything is crap.
Right, right. Well, I don't know why you're bothering with Google because that is certainly biased. You just need to take your magic 8 ball out there.
There you go. And you know what? That is going to be my solution to all of this stuff now.
Yes.
And that's actually something that did happen this week at the show. I started asking people, what would you ask 8 ball? And we kind of landed on adages. So instead of asking 8 ball kind of like who's going to win the Kentucky Derby, or who's to be the next president, whatever kind of really kind of narrow focused questions, we're like, well, let's ask the 8 ball: is the grass actually greener on the other side of the fence?
Oh,
And those turned out to be interesting questions.
yeah, but I'm afraid you may not be respecting the power of the 8 ball.
We should use it to like make some money. Is that what you're saying?
Well, I think you have the potential to make some money because you could develop the game and the rules of the game for it to become a board game, so to speak.
Oh, that'd be fun, wouldn't it?
Well, I think people would enjoy it. I believe as much enjoyment as you and I get out of it, even though we may be a little touched or deluded,
Just a little.
I think others would too.
That's a good idea. Let's look at that. But as you know, I money and I are kind of casual acquaintances.
Well, I didn't say we'd make a lot of money, but we might come up with something that people would enjoy.
Maybe we should change our names to Milton and
Bradley?
Bradley. Yeah,
There might be some copyright issues, but yeah, we could do that. And I think
yeah,
Hasbro owns it now. I'm not sure.
yeah. No, it's changed hands since we were all young pups playing Monopoly or whatever.
But we can all put our energy and focus into making it the next rage.
You know what? It's funny because it would hamstring all the media punditry. If everybody every time they heard a media pundit, uh, they said, "Well, yeah, but what does the 8 ball say?"
Yeah, exactly.
And then
Right.
whatever the 8 ball says, there must be a really good reason for it. And then you're challenged to find that reason within the 8 ball's logic. And that's kind of the cool thing about that show.
No, it is. Well, it is, and it is challenging, and it is emotionally, or you're going to test your mind with it.
Oh yeah, yeah. Sometimes I hear your questions and I'm like, ooh, if it says yes to this, I'm gonna have to
I'm in
really do
trouble.
some
I'll
I'm
be
gonna
li-
really do some digging here.
I'll be lying. I'll be lying out through my teeth. But yeah, but it's part of the game, and that's where the laughs come from.
No, and I'm legit thinking if the 8 ball says yes, that it's right.
Yeah, exactly.
And I have to now reformulate my slap down opinion on something to get it to work within the 8 ball's answer. And that's actually fun. It's challenging.
Well, and I think we should push it for an Olympic sport. I mean,
Maybe what do they do? The decathlete? What would the academic decathlon?
well, yeah, well, dancing with ribbons. I mean, what's more difficult, dance with a stick with a ribbon on it, or
I ain't
post?
gonna lie, that's probably way more difficult, at least for me.
Well, maybe, maybe. Certainly, you and I don't possess the talent to judge it.
My mama didn't rock me when I was a baby. That is actually a scientifically determined reason that people are good dancers. Did their mom dance with them, rock them in time to music when they were infants? To the degree that you got that, you got moves.
I find that very difficult to swallow, Scott. But
Right, right. That's not an is or an are, that's a maybe.
yeah, at
Or maybe
best,
not.
at best,
Maybe not.
maybe not. All right, why don't you give us a couple of thoughts and give us a trick that we can utilize going forward?
Sure. The trick is easy. It is whenever you feel an emotional attachment to a thought, you see something, you hear something, and you start thinking, that's horrible, that's awful, that's amazing, that's outrageous, that's incredible. That is should be your instant red flag. Emotional attachment to any thought should be an instant red flag that the thought needs closer examination. So anything that you bite hook, line, and sinker is probably going to reel you in, and that's the discernment that you can begin to use to kind of stay detached, to stay even, to stay calm, and in general, being detached and even and calm is a lot better for your life. It's better for your health. It's better for people who have to hang out around you. It's better for your dogs or your cats. And so can you be that chill person? And is that of value to you? And the easiest way to do that is to begin to examine your thoughts and pay particular attention to the ones that you cling to, the ones that grab you and give you emotional energy. Those are the ones.
Well,
Even
absolutely.
when they're happy, even when they're joyful thoughts.
Right. And let's try and keep those joyful thoughts reoccurring.
Well, some people want to surf joy all day, and that's the way consumerism really tries to sell you things, right? If you buy this or if you do this, you'll be happy, and being happy is the goal. I would dispute that. I would say that
I
no,
might be
being
wrong.
neutral is the goal.
Okay.
If you're sad about something, that's informative. It means you loved it. It means you care about it in some way, and that's okay. And if you're happy about something, that's okay too. But trying to stay in this kind of mildly elevated state of happy, happy, joy, joy, that's a pretty high bar.
Well, I don't know. I learned that if you're happy and know it,
Clap your
clap your
hands.
hands. Yeah, I learned that. And you don't hear me clapping that much, but
You're right. No,
at
no,
least it's something to fall back on.
no. And it's I would say content seems to be a more descriptive word of peacefully okay with whatever's going on around you and in you. And that's really the state I think that your body and your mind and everything is most attuned to. And
And
happy's good. Happy happens, but sad is okay too. And sad happens, and fear happens, and that's okay because it's trying to save your life. And it's something to work on. It's information.
yeah,
Oh, I'm scared. Why am I scared? What's going on? Is it something that I need to worry about, or is it something that I'm just kind of caught up in? And go from there. Unless,
well,
of course, your house is on fire, in which case you need to get your butt outside before you start doing all that existential thought stuff.
it's a good suggestion, and have a baseline. I'm not a person that senses fear very often because I'm waiting for Godzilla to show up. When Godzilla shows up, I'm afraid. I'll be ready.
Yeah, fear has to sneak up on me. If I know it's coming, then I can kind of barricade my I don't care. Um, but if somebody tapped me on the shoulder right now, and I was like really concentrating on doing the shot. I'd be like, oh,
Okay. All right, Scott. Well, I think this is a good topic, and I hope everybody in the dog park is well. And they're certainly adding to the show, whether they realize
they
it or
make it
not.
they make it happen because some of the things that happen there get me to thinking, get me to kind of wonder, what's the value of this, and how does it work in this community that we might take to this show and help share. And so, yeah, all credit to them.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate them, whatever that's worth. So, everybody, this has been Just in Case and Scott Dudley bringing you American Consciousness. Thanks for joining us. Remember, additional information and links are provided in this video's read more. Please take some time to be a better shepherd of your thoughts.